Let's go. So, friends, today we have the 30th of November, 2013 year. I am Vadim Zaporozhtsov. Mikhail Kolesnikov and I are conducting a seminar on the Vishuddha Chakra. All information is on the website of Open Yoga, less than Earl greater than. This is the second part. Unfortunately, the first part was not recorded on audio, but only here. They threw it off. Here's the recorder. Wonderful, super. Super. All right. So, we are going further now. The topic is interesting, the topic is important. Astral travel in mind control. The whole set, you know. It's serious. Let's start with a question. Part-time students, do you have any questions? There is such a question. Yes. Alessia Minitskaya. Yeah. Fears, smoking, self-doubt can interfere with the development of our chakra. Jokes. Fears, smoking, self-doubt. Yes, friends, all of these. Look, let's take it in order. Let's start with smoking. What is smoking? As Leo Tolstoy said, the American Indians, in revenge for the fact that the whites taught them to drink, taught the whites to smoke. And it is not yet clear what is more harmful. It's not clear. Indeed, smoking involves some such factors that are known from yoga pranama, and they really give such an effect. Well, how can I tell you, calming. What is done beautifully in pranayama yoga is done here, to put it mildly, dirty. So therefore, if you haven't smoked, and don't start, don't try. If you already smoke, try to get rid of it, but not in 3 days. Do you understand? That's the most important thing, so that there is no companionship. This is a different conversation. So it's clear that there, in some conditions, let's say during the war, when you got bombed there. You go out, your arms and legs are shaking. There would be at least some, antidepressant, right? There was also a Makarosha. But you're not at war now, are you? Not in the war. Bombs don't fall. No. Not yet, right? Here. Now the fears are the same situation. What was the third one there? Self-doubt. Well, self-doubt is the same fears, only a side view. Here. All this blocks your idea of yourself, and really interferes with the study of the subtle structures of your body. Any more questions? Thank you very much. Have you asked another question about what it means to master the chakra? Yeah. Yes, well, we'll touch on that now. Do you have any questions in the audience? Is nothing clear? Very good. Me too. There isn't? Again, you can still go from the other side on this issue. It turns out that fear is where we got it from. We have him on Muladhara, in fact. I am not sure of myself. She seems to work more with Manipura, when there is no such charisma, and so on, personality. It turns out that we, as it were, lower this energy down when we are afraid, and are not on the top. And it turns out that we involuntarily concentrate on the lower chakra, and not on tails. So we stop holding the lower chakras in our power, right? And we go down. Yes, I am absolutely correct. And the reverse situation. It means that mantra yoga, the repetition of well-known mantras, leads to the fact that it is easier for you to overcome fear and self-doubt easier. I had such a case, in fact, very revealing, as I can tell you. One Yevgenia Mizai. So, I just started studying mantras, and studied the mantra, and I didn't know anything else before that. It was back in those glorious 90s, when it was clear where the bandits ended, the militia begins, where the militia ends. The bandits begin. In the glorious years, I hope they are gone forever. My joy. Here. And so they began to press her. It's like this. Don't believe, don't be afraid, don't ask. Here. Well, the psychological impact. The scariest thing. They're starting to process you, right? cause fear and self-doubt. So, what did you do? She is there and somewhere and some there. Well, I won't tell you these details. Yes, she began to recite a mantra. She went into meditation with a mantra. They spent 3 hours there, thinking. Well, now it means that the client will mature. This is a common situation, right? And she spent these 3 hours in mantra yoga, and then they come. What? What is she to them? It's okay. That was the end of it. You understand, right? Because Opa? No, the client is not ready. Do you understand? And time is running out. That's why, if there is an opportunity at any moments to practice in practice related to the Vishuddha chakra, then they help a lot. Very. Then we go along with this. Please introduce yourself. Yuri, Vega Group, International Open University. The speech is measured by 4 quarters. They are known by the Brahmins, who are wise. 3 secretly folded quarters, they do not let the entrance. In the 4th quarter of the speech, people speak. That is, look, there is also such a very interesting bookmark here with working with vibrations. That sound vibrations are like, well, our usual words, 1/4 of what is laid inside there. And only the wise know firm mantra yoga, all the deeper possibilities that are enclosed, so it's in working with all this. So, that's wonderful. Any more questions? There are no questions. Mikhail, please continue. Yes. Oh, very well. Then it means, well, we will go through, actually, according to our text, the Nirpana chakra, we have such a yantra. Here. Well, that is so that we get attached to something, and so that it's easier for our mind to concentrate on it. Here is such an image. Me. Actually, that's what. Point it at the camera, please, so that it can be seen. It can be seen. Not. Apparently, because on the side. Yes. Here I will read it again, just so that you will look at it and understand what is drawn there. In the throat, there is a lotus called Vishuddha, pure, smoky purple in color. All the letters shine on the 16 petals of crimson color, clearly visible to the one whose mind is enlightened. At the base of this lotus is a circular area of ether, similar to a crescent full moon. For a circle and a month, it turns out like this at the bottom, see. On a snow-white elephant. But here, of course, it's not snow-white, it's gray, then white. Well, let's assume that's snow-white. Yes, the bija of the barn is sitting here, and his robe is white. 2 of his hands hold a noose and a goad, while the other 2 hold a gesture of blessing and averting fear. And this complements its charm. He always has a snow-white deity on his lap, a 3-eyed 5-face. Here, actually, you see, this is Shiva God on the right. Here is such a blue color, and he has 5 heads. She has a 3rd eye on each head. I'm also going to tell you what it's all about. For what? Why? With 10 beautiful hands. But here, of course, 4 of them are represented. That's not the point. Dressed in tiger skin. You see, too. But he's not dressed, he's sitting on a tiger skin. Gone, right. Try opening board 24. Well, 23 to be exact. Oh, 23. His body is joined standing, which is born of the Parvati mountains, and he is known by the name of Sada Shiva. This box is Sada Shiva, actually. Always beneficent. Step Tishikeen is represented here on the left, also with 5 heads. A goddess on a lotus, she sits shining in this lotus, purer than the ocean of nectar. Her robes are yellow, and in her 4 lotus-like hands, she carries a bow, a goad, a noose and an arrow. At the base of this lotus is the entire area of the moon with the unblemished sign of the hare. Here is the gateway of the path to great liberation for one who desires to attain bliss, yoga, and whose senses are purified and controlled. A Sada who has attained the fullness of knowledge of the Atman through the constant concentration of his consciousness on this lotus, becomes great, holy, eloquent, wise, enjoying the inviolable peace of consciousness. He observes the past, the present, and the future, becomes the benefactor of everything, free from ailments and suffering, long-lived, and like Hamsa, destroyers of endless dangers. Yugen, whose mind is firmly fixed on this lotus, whose breath is controlled by Kumhaka, has the power to pass through the three worlds. They are Brahma, not Brahma, Vishnu, neither Hari, Hera, Shiva, nor Suri, nor Ganapati, are capable of contradicting him. All this, of course, Vadim, it's all for everyone. And how would it be if we show a simple Hindu who bathes in all these signs, who sees elephants around him, who sees there all the time? Someone knows only Shiva, who these goddesses are. Everything is clear to them, in principle, right? They were simply told, here is Shiva, and the image of Shiva already appears in his head. And he says there are 5 heads, and this is a head, and everyone has a different name. They are called the following. Now I'll tell you 2. The first, the second, the third, Sada Shiva, the 4th Rudra, and the 5th Ishana. Here. And everything is clear to the Hindu, it's clear. It is desirable for us, of course, to give all this explanation. Who is Hara? Akora? The 5 heads actually represent our 5 principles of creation, our material world, of which we are composed. And, accordingly, this first chapter is the principle of the earth. The second chapter is the principle of water, the 3rd head, is the principle of fire, the 4th chapter is the principle of air, and the 5th is the principle of Akasha, and either space. Here is the first head, this is just the chorus. And the Hara are, as it were, incarnations of Shiva, which are usually found on such. They usually have extreme practices, tantric extreme practices. They sit on all kinds of corpses, and usually they live in places of cremation and burning of people. What is all this being done for? Yes, everything, of course, is not just like that. It's not just that they love it all there, but in order to develop with themselves, with their fears, to develop with your experiences, yes, and so that they stop clinging to this world. That is, when they watch the corpses of people being burned day after day, they understand how universal it is and how everything is, well, here. How temporary all this is. And it's not worth doing it, as it were, to concentrate on it. And accordingly, a person who has reached such a state, yes, that is, space, which is what we are talking about now, he, as it were, ceases to concentrate on the lower centers. Here. Okay, let's go. The second head is also round and round. Here, it represents God, it is called Ishana. This is the principle of water. The next one is Mahadeva. It's like the central one and it's square. And they explain. And why is it square? Because she means on. The central head. No, stop. The central head is oval. The square one will be the last one. It embodies the principle of air, that is, such dynamics. The air itself is dynamic, that is, the very principle of movement and space. It is the air that is responsible for this. And this oval, it embodies exactly the dynamics. The next head, it will be triangular, embodies, of course, fire. This transformation from one state to another. Yes, the direction of our energy and so on, the dynamics are the same again. And the last one is a square one, which represents the earth or such, you know how to say, a stable figure. Here. Why does the square represent the earth? Because it is a stable figure, which again extends in four directions, as we are used to, yes, to rely on something. And having four sides, that is, north, south, west, east, it embodies exactly the principle of the earth. Here, what are they? What's he holding? But in this case, the Shat chakra is not runi. It was described that he held a goad and a noose, right? For what? These are the two tools that the goad and the noose are the two tools that drive the elephant. The goad is designed to drive the elephant, but the loop holds it. Elephant, here is our comrade below. I'm going to touch it right away. An elephant, that is, an animal, in every chakra like this, in every yantra like this. He personifies exactly our original desires. That is, as if a person who is on this chakra, yes, but not yet engaged in yoga, not engaged in his transformation, yes. Spiritual growth here. He has his own qualities, this man, and somehow behaves. His man who is on this Vishuddha chakra, roughly speaking, he looks like an elephant. What do you mean like an elephant? Yes, it's hard for us to imagine that. And here it means exactly that this is a wise animal. This is an animal that is the oldest, which of the mammals that lives with us on? Well, it is believed among the Hindus that the most ancient one lives on our planet. Here. And it knows, well, it's kind of wise. It knows everything that you can eat, that you can't eat, yes. It is kind at the same time. It seems to be healthy, yes, it's like that, but she never offends if it doesn't hurt in any way, and, well, there's no inflammation going on, or don't start offending him. Again, yes, it seems to be so healthy, but at the same time, it is herbivorous, yes. It doesn't even offend other animals. Here. And here is such a person, yes, and it is considered a symbol of wisdom, knowledge. And even earlier, it was the elephant who chose the king. That is, if the king dies, and he did not have any heir suddenly, a Raja in India. Then the Raja's elephant could approach any of the people, just point at him with his trunk, and this person became a Raja. This was a strange ceremony of pluses, but that's what it means. And when we begin to engage in this magical transformation of ourselves, we become like these gods. Namely, here is one aspect I told Shiva, right? One of the aspects, and the second, well, as if we have, roughly speaking, a divine consciousness, yes, roughly speaking, and a divine mind. That is, or are we beginning to possess attributes, roughly speaking, divine, that is, more developed, yes. That is, what they would be original, how we can develop them. So, and accordingly, well, it's clear accordingly, right? Then what was the goad for, what was the loop for? It is in order to ride this elephant. To ride this elephant of wisdom, this elephant of such untouchability, yes. This elephant who is above all these animals, by the way, animals, yes, who? That's why we have Shiva sitting on a tiger. The tiger personifies this aggression, this throwing of the mind, and here is a man who has already taken over this. He sits on this tiger skin, and he begins to meditate on it. Here. The following, well, firm the attributes of our, yes, for example, Shiva, he has a trident. What does his trident represent? It's not just like that either. He personifies our three, well, first of all, body groups. Yes, this is causal, this is our subtle body, that is, thoughts, some experiences, and our physical body. In other words, a person who already finds Chakra on Vishuddha begins to meditate, begins to learn it, as it were, to reveal it in himself. He begins to become the owner of his bodies, begins to be unaffected. Also personify the three gunas, that is, the sattva guna, the raja gunas, the tamas gunas. What is tamas? It's such inertia, it's such stupidity of our mind, it's such stupidity, yes. Joy is such speed, yes, and our desire to act, the desire to somehow manifest. And sattva is the same state of activity, but at the same time of balance. When a person has such, a state of clarity happens, it's like, oh, I get it. Clearly. This is the state, in fact, of sattva. A person who is like the sages are considered, they are in this state all the time. We have a second. Hooray! Yes, and it's great for us. And the sages combine the fact that they are in a state of garden all the time. But a person meditating on this chakra, yes, he even becomes above this guna, reveals all abilities. He also holds a rosary in one hand, or is called mala in another way. Here. For what? Well, it's clear that in order to recite our beloved mantras, right? And in order to control it, not just recite mantras blah 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 blah, yes, unconsciously. Namely, being aware of each mantra, chastising each piece of this mantra, being aware of each meaning of this word, that is, being aware. Here. One more thing, in his native hand, he holds a drum that embodies this rhythm here. Rita, there is also Lita Yoga, that's the rhythm of this life. And now a person who has also already ascended the sutured chakra has risen, he feels this rhythm, he hears this sound. He follows it and it becomes easier for him to feel it. And one more thing, and he holds a mudra, yes, blessing, removing obstacles in our way. This is what concerns our God, the divine part, and we have Shakini Shakti here, and she holds a skull in her hand. Also, yes, such a pretty scary thing, but in fact it embodies exactly. How to say it? I'll tell you now. On such a decision, yes, and not involvement. That is, when we already turn off our brains, yes, and start to panic. Here. Namely, roughly speaking, we control it all. We control our minds, we control our own here. More precisely, not even the mind, emotions and feelings. In other words, we are already beginning to control this process. We keep ourselves in hand. We keep ourselves in hand. She's holding our skull. Here is another one in which she also holds clear too, again for this we respect, for which our Shiva is also. And in another one she holds the scripture. We remember, yes, that, the texts say again, that the goddess of speech sits there. This is exactly what this scripture embodies, that here we can, as it were, already transmit knowledge. That is, we possess not only knowledge, true knowledge, we can also transmit it. Also on this chakra, we can receive this knowledge from our goddess. In another one she holds an arrow. Here. That again personifies the ascension over these here. An arrow is considered to be the arrow of the god Kama, sensual pleasures. And she also holds it in her hands again, as a sign that she is already above these sensual pleasures, she is already above them. Here is such a thing. Yeah, great, thanks. So, look here, friends, here. What a thing. More about the elephant. Yes, now. Come on, come on, come on, come on. One more drop about the elephant. That's because the elephant, in fact, was still with us on the Manipura chakra. Manipura, Muladhara chakra, below. But there was an elephant named Araivara, and he had 7 trunks. That's what personified this lowly ability, something that is always owned, as it were, by a person on the lower chakras. There are already all these feelings of his, all of his needs here. Aspiration. Aspiration. Yes, aspiration. That's right, yes. It seems to connect into one, and it turns out that he is already, as it were, over it all. He has one reason that emits this sound, the pure sound of pure space. That's why he is exactly in this form with one trunk. Wonderful. Friends, look at how yoga was transmitted. And why are we stalling in the knowledge of yoga in the West? Yes, because it was transmitted in such images. Sometimes in a non-verbal way through pictures, through certain allegories, myths. Come to India, visit an ancient temple. Well, you see there is something image. For you it's well, someone drew something and put something there. And for the Hindu, everything has an allegorical meaning, and more than an allegorical meaning. Therefore, at one time, everyone rushed to India, hoping that now they would find a borax from the Himalayas somewhere there, at a reasonable price, and he would initiate them into all the secrets of yoga. And they were extremely disappointed. They just didn't reach a common language. On different these, in different universes. I'm there sometimes. It came to jokes. I remember once this very new Russian went to tell me from reliable sources, went there to some sacred place. They say there's a sacred mountain there, there's something something. And there are all the Indians around with a gasp, like some kind of local Kailasa. Is this a stump or something? This is garbage, dirt, is it sacred? But what about all these superpowers? What about those from the Himalayas, all these yogs? Then, this is the sacred lake. Is this the one with frogs croaking in it? Sacred lake, right? That is, we are, as it were, you know, we are a little bit in the West, and now we do not have a docking. We have such an internal representation of ourselves. And we expect something. Well, in general, there will be a wow there. We arrive well, a puddle like a puddle, a sacred lake, a hill like a hill, a sacred mountain. Here. And we just don't understand that this allegorical connection is going on right here. Now, on the other hand, every attribute, every symbol that you see there, they have a semantic load. Quite unambiguously. In one way or another, it is connected with one or another manifestation of the structure of our body. Therefore, if it is good enough to know the mythology and this graphics, then you can learn a lot of things without asking while in India. Without asking. And they appreciate people who know without asking. They appreciate it. Well, they're like on the same mentality. That is, when you don't break into a temple there with your shoes on or something. Well, there are a lot of such nuances. I once broke in on my own stupidity. There's one. They all made such a fuss. Well, really, an ancient temple, but I really, you know, I didn't even realize a little bit that this was already where the courtyard ended, the temple began. It wasn't very obvious, because sometimes there's a temple there, it's a pebble lying under a tree, and that's it, right? Well, sometimes there's some kind of add-on. And God knows where it is possible in shoes, where it is impossible. Especially you go with a backpack, you know, they're on the luggage somewhere in the mountains there. Well, it's already sickening, isn't it? Mountain sickness, thin air. And then you have to look at your feet, where the temple began, where it ended. Here, but... And it's clear that then you begin to understand it all. So, iconography, images, all these mantras, yantras, written, drawn, they carry quite specific certain instructions. Let's say Shiva draws blue throats, supposedly that when nectar was produced, poison was formed. So that he didn't kill anything, Shiva drank it. His body has become the body. The throat turned blue. Here. Therefore, one of such allegorical names of Shiva is blue-throated. Everyone will say, well, there's the temple of Blue Gorlev. And you think, my God, what is this about? Has anyone ever heard of the firmware, but about the blue head? Not really. So again, you know, allegorically, a word can be a poison that kills everything and everything. You know, there are poisonous people. Oh, ugh, it's disgusting. And as soon as they open their mouths, it would be better if he kept silent. And vice versa, nectar is revitalizing, saving. Again, the word. Then there is the next such paraphernalia very strange. Here is Mikhail in this picture, here as it were, the ideas from some treatises are summarized. And there are other treatises, images concerning the Vishuddha Chakra, in particular. This is the image of Sadashiva. This is generally a very strange image for a European, half man, half woman. Sometimes they depict it, so one side is female, the other side is male. I mean, what is it in general? What kind of incomprehensibility is this, right? Here. But in fact, again, this is exactly, including one of the personifications, that it is like such a high level, where consciousness and energy are so intertwined that it is impossible to separate them from one another. You know, like in mantra yoga, where energy and consciousness are together, almost pure prana. Here. And so on and so forth. There are a lot of these attributes here, which, if you know, for you any image is a whole treatise. A whole treatise. You can meditate, contemplate, and you understand allegorically what they wanted to say to you. That's why pay more attention to all the images, but first of all, of course, to the ancient ones. Although there is also such a science, how to depict the faces of all these gods in India. Everything is very strict there. Try to draw something wrong there. Oh, there's the wrath of Icarus. That's wonderful. So now let's go further. Here was the question. What does it mean to awaken the chakra? No, not as a question. Master the chakra, awaken the chakra, or use the chakra. Well, let's start in order. There is such a term in yoga. First of all, in Kundalini yoga, it is to dissolve the chakra. This is when the Kundalini energy wakes up completely and consistently dissolves the chakra behind the chakras of the lowest, reaching Vishuddha. This is actually the dissolution of the canvas on which everything else was painted. The same process allegedly happens to you at the moment of death, when you are already dying in this life, and you gradually begin. Well, first, as you remember, your gross body falls off from your subtle bodies. Well, really, a corpse. Actually, only the shell remained there. And all the subtle bodies, they are disconnected. Therefore, you know, it is not customary to pay much attention to corpses in India. This is more of a Western idea, you know. And not even a Russian idea. In Russia, as far as we remember from the chronicles, they love to burn. But to bury, I do not know since when it went. Well, until now, here is Lenin's mausoleum. As a matter of fact, well, you know, here is the deification of the body. This is something completely strange, which, in fact, was not characteristic of either Russia or India. Where it came from is not clear. More precisely, where it came from is clear. That is, the fact is that when certain saints lived, they rebuilt their body so much during their righteous life, and with all sorts of techniques that are akin to ethical ones, that it did not disintegrate after death. And they say, relics, but here are the relics of the saints. Here. Yeah, there's this one. Come on, so that. That's it, on the hall, now you can play with it. So, it is clear that the saint died, and the body does not decompose. And so it became associated somewhere in the subconscious with S. It was S. As if with holiness. But from a formal point of view, well, yes, maybe he really has something. Sort of. If we are not saints with you, but ordinary people, then, in fact, there is no special meaning in the body, in the corpse. Moreover, it is believed that even sometimes it interferes. Because, you know, there are such very imaginative representations that the soul sees its body from the outside, tries to revive it. But it does not revive. And on the contrary, it means even more that this most nervous shock is already there from the higher spheres, right? So, well, what happened? At the level, as it were, as we already understand, the Vishuddha chakra, the space of our internal structures, is separated from our physical space with our physical body. And in the future, the following processes begin, which already lead to the fact that already subtle moments disintegrate. Disintegrate, and at a certain stage, the principle associated with the principle of space also seems to disintegrate. So in Kundalini Yoga, you can, as it were, partially experience the same state of awakened Kundalini energy that a person experiences at death. In general, I have such a guess that all our narratives about the yogs of dying, they were mostly received by yogs who through Kundalini Yoga. They gained this experience, then came back and told me. Because an ordinary person, if he has survived death, he does not return. All sorts of stories about being there somewhere and then coming back. It means he's not completely dead, you know. Here. So, look further, what happens? This is the most radical way. See, here's my Zai. Here it is the younger generation. There is. Here's who's going to be sitting here soon. Yes, my distance. But another question arises. And if you have energy in the removal is not about out. That's it. Remember everything. Yes. Here. The joy of mastering, as they say, Vishuddha. My joy. Yes, he told me everything. Then there is a moment when, first of all, you begin to feel this center inside yourself and identify it, as far as you can focus on it and generally know that you have it. What we usually learn about the Vishuddha chakra after we have read the treatises. Before that, we had a general idea of what I had there at the base of my throat. So, after you begin to feel and understand how everything is done there and how it is all managed, you have the ability to use these hidden mechanisms in one way or another. And here is already such a next gradation, as that awareness of the awakening of use. To one degree or another. Well, in fact, here it is very interesting. But it's really very interesting, this experience here. As you begin to concentrate on this chakra, you mentally begin to clear all channels and centers, and understand how everything is done there. And understanding how everything is done there, manage it. And it is very interesting to read here the experience of Ram Krishna, who accordingly described his knowledge of this plane, this level of the throat. Please. Words of delight and blessing burst out of my throat. I never stopped praising the Lord, and if anyone talked about pleasure and possession, his words removed me like a rod. It was so strong that when one of my relatives came to consult on family matters, I ran away and hid in the Panchavati bushes. The friends who tried to hold me seemed to me like a well, where I was pulled by my feet. I was suffocating in the depths of a dark hole. I could only find peace by looking at them. In a word, in this valley of intolerance and love for everyone, we need to pass it. So look here, yes, very interesting remarks. There is no tolerance and love at this level. Indeed, when you own the power of words, there is a giant tool for managing other people, everything in general. But you enter into such ecstasy from this word that you are somewhere again disconnected from the feeling of this world. And you don't have love, you don't have the desire, well, to feel. As they say, for the sake of a red word, remember, right? A saying. You don't remember, do you? That is, you don't have any love. That is, for the sake of a red word, he will not regret his father either. Sometimes people get into such a rush when they start saying that they sometimes say very scary things, but they don't feel the horror of everything. That is, as if there is no understanding of others with all their pains, problems. There is no tolerance, and for the level of yoga or ijin, there is no level of tolerance. That is, everyone around is some half-finished sheep. They are talking all sorts of nonsense, and I have to listen to it. And it hits the ears. And I don't want to listen. And I don't want to be around together. And I don't want to delve into any of these problems. Everything seems so painful, so somehow everything is not interesting, as Rama Krishna describes, as if you were pulled into a dark well, to the very bottom, and you don't want to go there. Here. Well, as you understand, there is nothing good, there is nothing bad. There are appropriate and inappropriate. Therefore, on the one hand, this is an extremely useful quality in some life situations. Well, let me explain what I mean. Let me remind you of the previous seminars, where, by the way, were these books. They were cleaning up the books while Senechki was there. About what? Removed. It is necessary to sell. So, friends, I recommend it. Where? Where are the books? Let me prepare it just right. What kind of seminar is this already with us? I don't remember. We have considered it before. For the first seminar. In my opinion. We have a sixth. So, I recommend this to you. This is the biggest seminar. There are probably 2 seminars at once, yes. The first one, yes, entered. So this is according to the first seminar, there are basic principles. And who wasn't? How much? Price. The price is free. No, it's free about nothing. Everyone is starting to be afraid. What price do you want in a box for a ruble? No, come on, let's assign the minimum. 50 rubles. 50 and more. Yes, that's it, agreed. From 50 and more. I recommend it. So, look what kind of thing turns out. Muladhara fear, Svadhisthana lust, Manipura anger. Anahata what?
Jealousy.
Jealousy and the desire to possess. Here you are. You're something? My little book. I won't give it back. Where did you come to? In her head, did they come to the 3rd grade or to Manipura? No, I won't give it back. That is, in fact, by such simple enough reactions, you can understand a lot of things. Here. And sometimes this jealousy and desire for possession plays a very stupid service with us. We should have uncoupled and forgotten. And we grabbed, pressed, and that's it. And so they clung tightly, as they say. This concerns some things. It sometimes concerns some kind of status, position. It very much concerns relationships with relatives and friends. Sometimes a husband clings to his wife like that, it's impossible to tear her off at all. Well, okay, it should be a wife. But you just met a random person. Or vice versa, someone. The mother clung to the child like that. You know, these hugs are already starting to choke the baby. We must also give freedom, and not just my non-possession, right? And again, there is a good-bad thing about it. With regard to the husband of the wife, that you are clinging to your wife and not letting her, and it can be good. And if you cling to someone else's wife, well, a joke. Of course, if you are clinging to something or someone wrong, it also happens. Or you, well, you know that's not it. And you understand, you sometimes understand yourself. In hindsight, we all actually understand what's going on somewhere. And you can't do anything with yourself. You can't, that's all. And a knife to the heart. There's my nice and new rattle. I won't give it to anyone. And only when you start from the level of Vishuddha Chakra, mastering this principle, concentration, awareness, mantras, exhortations, repetition leads to the fact that you overcome this feeling. In other words, it turns out that each higher chakra eclipses the previous one. Lust, fear, anger of lust. The desire to possess overshadows anger. On the one hand, we can swear at someone, on the other hand. Both in a good way and in a bad way. And then the next thing is that when there is a question of possession, and it is very difficult, then climbing to the Vishuddha chakra. You seem to be from the position of the height of the Vishuddha chakra, and you say, Lord, what did I grab? But don't. And there is the ability to pull away. Here. In other words, this is a very important quality. It is very. Remember, yes, that you want to control the previous one. Start working with the next one. Do you want to develop the next one? With what? From the previous one, yes. It seems to me that the reason for schizophrenia of students is when they accidentally fall on this chakra, right? No, the cause of schizophrenia can be very different. The reason may be very different. Here comes a student, we don't know his background. When everyone comes, it seems that everyone is the same. But this is the outer layer, and everyone has the same depth as not. Different layers of prehistory. Therefore, it can be different. Maybe there. Yes. So, now there's something else, something. Yes, questions, friends. Part-time student. Yes. Dmitry Anna Kirsanova. Regarding Nayas and chakras, is it possible to say that the tactile level of interaction between a man and a woman is higher than the sexual one? Well, let's ask you questions, friends. In general, the question of sexuality is one of the most difficult in yoga. There is pure sexuality, and there is a manifestation of sexuality. Pure sexuality is boundless, like the whole universe. In pure sexuality, there is everything, and all chakras are involved without exception. But in some characteristic manifestations of sexuality, one thing, then another, then a third comes to the fore. Roughly speaking, there the trigger or detonator to the emergence of sexuality can be both a touch and a word, which means pronounced and a lot of everything, as well as the image of a beautiful goddess and everything. But it's just, like an entrance. Sexuality itself, friends, it does not come down to any chakra. Well, so that you understand what we are talking about, remember, what is sexuality? Sexuality is, in fact, the channel through which a new universe is born. Children are born in all its spectrum. Sexuality, therefore, cannot be reduced to any one chakra. So working with all the chakras can both contribute to sexuality, and vice versa, its suppression. Let's say tactile touches can both open the way to sexuality, and vice versa, help sublimate sexuality into something higher. Images, words, and so on and so on. That's why there is no such link here, if we are talking about pure sexuality. As for blocking, there. Well, you know an example. Husband and wife argued, quarreled. The husband climbs to hug, and the wife, don't touch me. That is, after what he told her, she doesn't want to be touched. You understand, right? Once the blockage passes immediately. Here. So, are there any more questions there? He is interested in whether it is possible to purchase literature by mail here. Oh, we have a patient. Friends, students, especially full-time students. Here we once had an online yoga store. But here's some kind of black hole. They take it up and throw it. Already 5 people. They took it and threw it. I give it to you. You will earn a couple of dollars or something rubles there. I'm just happy. No one. Here I need a person who would take over our online store. No, this is not the right online store. It's different. This is ours. That online store will be ready in another year because there is a database there. I mean our little, modest one.
Or maybe it should be attached to a large one.
Yes, we will definitely do that later, but when he is ready. something I understand that. No, 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 there's another question. But this is another topic. The question there is that they need to be purposefully engaged. There is no one now. There the programmer has to sit there to screw up payment systems, but therefore, even earlier, we could easily do it, send it. Now it's just that no full-time student wants to get involved with this. No one needs money in principle. You understand, right? So the store closed. As soon as there is a full-time student, because, well, again, it is necessary to send out from here. Who will undertake it? That's it, I promise. We divide all profits and losses 50-50. With me. Share. Nobody wants to open mine. 50-50. Everything is fair. Nobody wants to. Here. Everyone will want to. No one would want to. I didn't offer. But in extreme cases, in fact, you can contact any student and ask him to send it simply. Well, this is an extreme case, I mean. What? In general, you can buy it at a field seminar if you come here. So, okay, any more questions? And 4. Bugayev asks the question. If they are rude, then the Russian word ham has something to do with mom. Here's a really interesting question. In general, an interesting linguistic question is, why these or those say bija mantras? It's an interesting topic, isn't it? Hamster, ham, right. In general, it is necessary to reflect on this. It's good in general. There may be, in the sense of its abija, the sound of some pedal on some chakra, and then, like for the end. No, well, there's most likely a speech center, and a hamster like that. Usually a hamster's tongue, right. Here. Yes, an interesting thought. We need to reflect. In general, in fact, studies of linguistics and the origin of languages. It's such an interesting activity, friends. You just can't imagine how words passed from one language to another. So, in general, all these hypotheses are official, unofficial, semi-official, about the origin there. That all languages arose from a single Berryan foreign language, which then began to branch. About that, well, yes, they say, Indo-European roots. But in fact, all languages have been brought together now, as far as I know. True, someone claims that this is not the case, but this is a difficult question. There among, in the academic environment, there is its own party, yes, but it's very interesting, yes. Any further questions? Yes, please.
Love and jealousy are considered to be on the Hatha chakra. As Roma said, there is no love, no patience at the level of Vishuddha, right?
Detachment?
Detachment, as it were, turns out
Coldness. Where?
the love that exists at the level of the Anahata chakra. It is as soon as, let's say, some facet of the manifestation of something. Let's say, as falling in love, as a state that, what this world is based on, falling in love.
No, if we mean love, and falling in love, as really what this whole world is based on. And this factor, let's call it the factor of life in another way, manifests itself through any chakra. Not necessarily to the hut, but through all the others.
Is there a guarantee?
No, there is no such border here. Here, as if separately, look here, there is what is called the highest. Well, if we consider it from the standpoint of the yoga of falling in love, there is a certain higher meaning of this world, which is called the highest transcendental love, or the highest transcendental love. And it can manifest itself through all the chakras. Here. And there are, as they say, pronounced manifestations, just like shells. Therefore, through the Anahata chakra, love can manifest itself, as well as over there, love, but it can also be a shell, for just the desire to possess. Similarly, the Vishuddha chakra can be both a container through which the Supreme shines, and a container for something very ordinary. In other words, in this respect, you know, there is such a situation, that the manifestation of the Supreme is elusive. Only it seems to you that you have caught her, the bird of happiness by the tail, in one or another chakra, do you understand? And since the gold disappeared, what was left in his hands? Shards. Not shards, there's usually something left. Embers. Embers, yes. Here. Therefore, there is a slightly different one here. Such a moment. So, is there more? Yes, please.
There is a state when, Let's say you feel detached, you feel that you don't love anyone.
Yes, and how there I heard with such that I don't want to listen to anyone. Yeah, sort of.
Although it was interesting to you before.
Is it possible to say that it is?
Well, this chakra works, right? Or is it already simple?
No, no, here with regard to Ramakrishna's experience, there was a little bit different. That he was on the threshold of something so much more grandiose that compared to this grandiose. Everything ordinary earthly is like a prison, like, well, something burdensome to you.
Как тюрьма, как, что-то тебя отягощающее.
Here, if in ordinary life we have such that, well, here we are in this state, then this is certainly a completely different manifestation. It's from another, well, as if from another. The consequence of some other things. That there really is such a situation when from some point on, well, you absolutely don't care about everyone and everything. But this, in general, does not mean that you have reached any spiritual heights. Unfortunately, he is also a very common mistake. He believes that a yogi should be frostbitten, it hurts someone there. But he should say, well, that's right, you have such stupid karma. Someone feels good, someone is happy, but supposedly he should say, why should I be happy with you? I had to be impassive, unperturbed. In other words, they are trying to imagine a yogi as such. You know, here is a piece of wood that is not cold, not hot. No, that's not right. Here. But on the other hand, that is, when it is an appropriate manifestation, when you get involved in a situation. Only when you consider it necessary to get involved, then yes, this is the highest thing. That is, so that it is, well, roughly speaking, that if you just have such a state piled on you, regardless of your will, then this most likely action speaks about your karma. It should be completely under your control, so that you can turn it off at any moment, turn it on at any time. Do you understand? That's when it's yoga. And when there's just something wrong with you, well, the condition has found uncontrolled from you, then it is rather the consequences of some previous actions. So wonderful? Yes, please. When they say that, well, there are no words for the expression. It can be both in relation to something bad there, and in relation to something very good, let's say, beautiful, there are no words there. But at this moment, how does it work? Well, extreme surprise. Yes, extreme surprise that. Well, the same Ramakrishna has a very interesting continuation of this narrative about what he said, that guys, I can't tell you. As they say, such a bike goes. He gathered his students, and when asked, what are the chakras, Kundalini, and how it all works, he did this. Allegedly, he awakened the energy of Kundalini, lemonation, we do not know about it. He felt what was happening to him, and started talking. And so he described all the chakras, one state from another to another, until he rose above the Vishuddha chakra in the realm of the mind, then he fell silent. And then, when he came out of this state, he would say, guys, you understand, right? When I awaken this state there, it is so grandiose that my tongue is silent on this state of the Buddha, yes. It's beyond, it's unspeakable, right? So maybe, yes, but only this is in relation to the good. That's about the bad. It seems to me that the bad thing is just the opposite going down, that I have only emotions, there is nothing even to say anymore. Oh yeah. Moo is not articulate. And break the dishes, right? Yes. Condition, right. So that's it then. Yes, please, yes.
But I want to voice my question. I do not know if he has such an answer. But since we are talking about Ramakrishna, I noticed that I read autobiographies, including Ramakrishna and other teachers. There is such a coincidence, a discrepancy, that they were dying of throat cancer. It was written died of throat cancer. And so I thought, maybe it has something to do with the work of the chakra bear too.
Well,
I wonder in general, what is the reason for this? But this is such a rhetorical question.
no, well, friends, you know, here you have to understand that. But someone came up to me even before the seminar about a person with a throat had problems. He's not at the seminar right now. Well, a friend came up, and he says, my throat was disappearing then. Well, after advertising that we would have a corresponding seminar, he came up and said, you know, I have problems with my throat. My voice disappears, then it arises. But I've already decided. Well, I asked how. Well, I was there at a lecture alone, where Vedic culture was taught, and they just told me. And you have problems with your throat because you're lying. In a past life, or in this one, right? Friends, there is nothing more monstrous and incommensurable than such parallels. Well, in terms of wanting to have a lot of money, dollars. We're all green. Because dollars are green, similar to similar will be collected. Or there, if you have a problem with something, then you used it incorrectly. This is just complete idiocy. Or if you were burned in a gas chamber in a concentration camp, it means that you burned someone yourself in a previous life. That's it, one. That's it. This is an absolutely unambiguous explanation. I do not know what combinations of cause and effect there are, yes, in particular, especially with regard to, say, the same Ramakrishna, for the simple reason that, in response to a direct question from the students, this, by the way, has been preserved, he was asked, and like, well, first of all, why is this happening to you? He answered it very transparently, but said, imagine if I were not one of you, but showed some kind of over my condition. You would, he told the students, would not even get to me. Because I would be swarmed like flies by those who strive for wealth, power, strength, who are striving for this external thing. That's why he said I was very. Give me mine. I am glad that this situation is for the simple reason that there are devotees around me. And all of them accidentally disappeared. My joy. What is it? The creature. My joy. Here. So, you know, this is such primitivism that if someone died from this, then he did this and that. This can only give birth, you know, to an obscurantistic, not sharpened, inflamed consciousness. Well, you know, it's obscurantism in its purest form, to associate one with the other. We don't know. Especially everything that concerns such personalities as, say, Vivi Canada, friends. All right, Rama Krishna is my joy. He lived 60 years. He reached the highest samadhi there when he was almost 20, right? And he taught everyone for the remaining 40 years. Then I just realized that there was no one to teach anymore. Rama Krishna died at the age of 41. More precisely, he did not die, but left. I gathered everyone, said goodbye to everyone. That. Jontant. Yes. And he did so very much. He had a lot of Christian followers, which means that he did something, some kind of ritual. Washed their hands or something, I don't remember, something like that. Kind of like this. Yes. Here. He gathered everyone in meditation, started doing practice, fell on his side, and left in the presence of everyone. That's it. I said goodbye to everyone, said, guys, that's it. I've done everything here that we can't judge. And someone will say, yes, his kondrashka was enough there. You know, right. What was he doing? Why did you fall on this side, right? Probably, he pushed others with this side. He fell on this side, and died on this one. Well, friends, you know, this is such an obscurantist zombifying thing, well. Some kind of superstitious feeling, like this is not even a feeling, this is a way of thinking. And it's very sticky, very sticky. As soon as you know, I assure you, as soon as you are given a book of bad signs to read, you will instantly have bad ones. Even if they weren't bad before, they will be. This is some kind of archaic property of our brain to relate to some very subtle signs that are not yet grasped by the mind. But something has to be done. This probably allowed us to survive, but at some stage it plays a bad service. Therefore, you remember, yes, the approach in yoga, from stupidity through logic to superlogic. Therefore, I do not know what Ramakrishna did so bad or good there, but I would not put it so unambiguously. In the end, you know, here we need to look at the whole situation as a whole. So, is there more? Yes, please. I understand that the ability to fantasize is associated with this chakra, am I right? The ability to fantasize. Well, as if to create a certain space, another. No, it's understandable, yes. But you see, here after all, the ability to fantasize is probably more for the mind. But a receptacle for fantasies, like a canvas for an artist. Well, probably, yes. Well, that's the question. Fantasy is actually the ability to combine certain visual images. Well, not necessarily. For musicians, these are sometimes sounds, for people tactile sensations. Yes, a special case. But we can recreate the images that we saw once. And here is the link, respectively, with manicure, that is, how is the perception of images? No, you know, right. One more time. This is more a space of imagination, a receptacle where, strictly speaking, all the ingredients of the previous chakras can be placed. Well, imagine now. So let's turn on the space of imagination. Is everyone sitting down now? Everyone sat down. Everyone sat down. They straightened their back, neck, head, and closed their eyes. They closed their eyes. We concentrated and imagined how you cut a lemon. Lemon. Lemon? Sour like this in general, here it is in general, yes. And then you squeeze it out. You immediately have a response, an image something yellow, a taste recipe something sour. The olfactory recipe, you know, is the smell of lemon. So tactile that you press it. Therefore, all of this has fit into the space of your imagination now. But Ka-guided or directed the whole process of reason and scrapping. And if I didn't know what a repair is, then what? I couldn't have done it. So what? It was a wonderful answer. What is it? Wonderful. No, nothing. No. I just want to understand. Maybe there is some connection with this. What? With what? A bundle. That is, this is the receptacle, and let's say, let it be in the previous chakras, that is, with some perceptions, well, it doesn't matter, gustatory, visual, or something else. I didn't quite grasp the question of what. I can't form up to the end. Okay, we'll come back a little later then. So, does anyone else have any questions? Are there any questions in touch? No, not yet.
And the basic emotion is the chakra. It turns out from the strangeness.
So let's reflect, speculate about the basic emotion. I think it's a lack of emotion. Let's reflect, let's speculate. If, once again, fear, lust, anger, possession. Well, in the sense of jealousy, possession here what?
Indifference.
Indifference. Not really. Let's leave the question open. This is due to the attachment of the trap. Communication. What other emotion do we have? What kind of emotion is there at all? Well, let's see what we are. Addiction. No, peacock. What is he doing? How to bring it all together? Well, let's leave the question. Admiration.
Not revealing yourself, appearing.
Charm. One of the facets. You understand, everything is certainly more complicated there. In general, strictly speaking, friends, of course, at our seminars it's all so galloping across Europe. And in the first approximation, but I have never met anything better than what we have. All over the internet, both Russian-speaking and non-Russian-speaking. Here. It's just that something more difficult to tell you now is to overload you. But it's pointless to tell you about integral calculus there if we don't know the multiplication table. Here, but in general, strictly speaking, look, as many petals as there are so many facets of manifestation. And here there are as many as 16. Okay, well, they're writing something. Here again, here's pride, yes, but what is pride? Well, in a bad way. Self-enchantment. When you are self-charmed. Yes, Vadim Valeryevich Zaporozhtsev. Did you hear that? Here. And what does this mean? It's starting to stick out something self-explanatory. Yes, I am. Yes. Okay, all right. Next.
I correctly understood that when we see something pleasant and things disappear from us, and also when something terrible happens there, or someone attacks us, we also lose our voice. That is, this was something that goes just down into the lower chakra.
The soul is in the heels, right?
Sometimes something terrible happens. That is, he is a man, he can't even say anything.
Well, yes, but sometimes it's scary that he can't even move.
Well, yes.
That is, here, as a matter of fact. Well, how? Friends, once again. Here. Well, as it were now, these are the points of view on the chakras, on ancient Indian knowledge, primitivism. Here, go upstairs, there are rows of books lined up in rows. Who is there? He does not write, he who does not know how to write. Especially, of course, Americans love. Oh, that they are there only means their own personal experience. I don't even dare to look. From time to time I'm flipped through either to laugh or to cry. Here. And so, you know, as we open, let's say, everything is somehow done, the car is somehow made. Opening this lid, right. There's a motor. And we can say in the first approximation, yeah, this is spinning here, and this is going there. Or something else. But in fact, this motor consists of thousands of units there, and so on. That's about exactly the same way we study the structure of our body in the first approximation and reaction. That is, and accordingly, you know how to say, but if I turn the key, but the car doesn't go. Is this my so-and-so, or is this and this? Yes, there can be a million factors. The mouse chewed through the wire, you know. This has nothing to do with the breakdown of cars at all. Here, everything can be more complicated. And I hope that someday there will be such a link between science and yoga. Because science comes from the outside with all the pros and cons. The advantages are that it weeds out obscurantism at once. There is talk about Mahatmas, about chakras, about their damage from the eyes. They are not particularly in high esteem. Here. But on the other hand, science does not grasp any more subtle nuances that you can only subjectively understand. And if there is ever a connection between science and yoga, we will have a breakthrough. Okay, all right. Next. Any more questions?
Can I?
Yes, please.
Here's another thing. When we brag or are praised, yes, we tear out this head, and as it were, I am like this. Well, it's also like if it's mine.
Well, look, are you coming today or okay not? No, you will come, but don't turn on the TV, right? Here. Pay attention, some announcers are doing some kind of reportage there. Here he has one fixed point Vishuddha, and he himself is like this. That's it with the microphone. You understand, right? In other words, he concentrated on this center. There are clearly no brains. And there are no feelings either. There is, you know, a peacock's tail. And fan something there, some phrase. Sometimes it turns out well, sometimes it turns out badly. More often it's bad. Or turn on some, you know, TV shows are everywhere right now. You turn on the series, and no matter how beautifully it was shot, as soon as the squeaky voice, smoked there by some artist, everything. You want to turn it off right there. Why? Because the image and the sounds do not coincide, they are dissonant. And hop. Because, you see, yes, hearing is a higher chakra than Manipura image. Sometimes a handsome man, very handsome, but only his mouth will open everything. As all illusions also disappear in relation.
исчезают в отношении него.
Two students, when we study all this, methods of consciousness, yes, in fact. There is one at the Open University in senior courses. This course is called the Method of Consciousness. How to practically work with speech. In fact, the course is very difficult. It is very difficult for him to go. Here I always recommend the film My Fair Lady Once, in some 60s or something. It was shot based on the novel by Bernard Shaw. The New Pygmalion, in my opinion it is called. Here's a better look at it. Something else. That's it, right. Is there more? And let me rephrase it a little differently. All right. In other words, it turns out that I can make such a thing, that is, we can fit into this space. Only those objects with which we have been in contact in this world are called jokes.
Только те объекты, с которыми мы контактировали в этом мире.
No, well, not necessarily. We can come up with some kind of object, but we can be. Why not? You know, here. And this, by the way, is a very ancient question. Let's say a horned hare. But it will be a combination of the objects that we have seen. Yeah, the hare. That is, can we, in principle, come up with something, well, what you haven't seen, to bring it there, that is, to create a kind of world out of what we have not come into contact with? No, I understand, yes. But look, yes, the answer is as follows. Here in the early 20s. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a revolution in physics. Before that there was classical physics, after that there was quantum physics, the theory of relativity. And they began to operate with very strange things that cannot be imagined.
Которую нельзя себе представить.
Well, in particular, let's say an electron can move, but there is no trajectory of movement.
Но траектории перемещения нет.
And it turns out that.
Получается так,
Where did this come from?
откуда это взялось?
From the analysis.
За
We set up an experiment, confirm some theory there and try to imagine it. And suddenly we realize that we can't imagine. We can operate on this. Indeed, we can build an electron microscope there and that's it, and everyone can use it. Yes, but we can't imagine. Or let's say, once again, that's what? Here you are in a room, sitting in a room. According to the general theory of relativity, the space in this room is curved. The closer to the center of the Earth, the more curvature. Do you see that? No. Can you imagine that? With difficulty. And yet, let's say this GPS system, you know, these sensors, these satellites fly like they do, right? And the coordinates are determined. There, Einstein's corrections for this are included in the software, because at such a scale, and with all this, it already makes some kind of difference. Therefore, sometimes it happens that we sort of take the sixth sense organ, which is called the mind.
органом чувств, который называется разум.
We comprehend something and transfer it accordingly to the area of space.
В область пространства.
And sometimes it doesn't go from the sixth to the fifth.
Вот в пятой не
What is abstract? What do you mean? Well, I mean, what is an abstract thing of some kind? But it is not abstract, it seems to us, it is concrete. The curvature of space, as the theory of relativity teaches us, is general, it is a very concrete thing. More concrete than anything else. It seems abstract to us. But we understood this only from the realm of reason. We have never encountered this in our lives. So we can't imagine it. We kind of pulled it out from above, and are trying to push it down. Here. These moments happen very often. I am. Who does not know, I am a physicist in my previous, first specialty. I graduated from the Moscow Engineering Physics Institute, now it is called the Nuclear University. And we have very much. I haven't seen white light there for 3.5 years at all. In general, in principle. It was mathematics and physics. Mathematics and physics. And at some point, you really plunge into this other world, into another dimension of mathematics and physics. And you know, I caught such a very strange feeling that suddenly, after the course of quantum mechanics, I suddenly began to look around in surprise.
Я вдруг с удивлением стал смотреть вокруг.
I suddenly realized that my ideas about the world were hallucinations and delusions.
И заблуждение.
And it's really not like that. And it is clear that, well, as if this greatly affects the imagination later, and the revision of all their views. That's why it's a difficult question here. That is, it's not necessarily imagination, it's that. What we have already encountered. We can, as it were, deduce something with the help of reason. The mind is already another level. This is a different level, a higher one, yes. This is the Ajna chakra, yes. Well, it turns out that we are trying to cram from the Ajna chakra level, so I understood that just as much from the lower levels is possible. That is, as a certain. That's just like a certain one. Yes, and actually has a very good question asking why. Because there is such yoga. The most magnificent yoga. It's just that the one who has mastered it, one can say, begins to live in a new way. It's called visualization yoga. Visualization yoga. We have a very nice course on the website of the Tochka Open Yoga Tochka.ru course. In fact, it is a very strong course. This is a continuation of the axiomatics of yoga, by and large. So, there is a technique there, how to really work with visualization images. And where is the edge of pairing what your ordinary senses perceive with your visualization? And where are the boundaries of your visualization? What you can visualize in principle, and what you can't. And you know, a lot after that it becomes clear, say, in the same India, when you come there. Why they experienced this or that experience, which seems strange to us. Here. But we are already moving away. So wonderful, friends. Time. Yeah. It's time to do something practical.